Okay, warm welcome again to everybody this morning, to both of those who joined early and those who joined after my initial greeting to everyone, and welcome. I see people have started putting in the chat where they're from. You're more than welcome to do that if you wish so. Um, I see it is 5 minutes past 9, so I think we can kick off this morning's program. I'm Anissa Musa, National Coordinator of the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. I thank you all for taking the time to join this important workshop this morning. It's something we started looking at last year already. Renee from National Freedom Network has also presented at our webinar. We've had webinars, like I said, on trafficking in persons. We're hoping to have a follow-up after this with someone from DST around registration and requirements. I also want to say, as a formal introduction, that we know that human trafficking is a complex issue. And there's a lot of commonalities, and we find ourselves intertwined with gender-based violence. Survivors face unique challenges, though, that may be a little bit different to that when it comes to, or maybe a bit more complex or specific, that affects survivors of trafficking, and that requires specialized support, specialized resources. It's always good to know these things. We working in the shelter space is are faced with survivors who come with general complexities. Sorry, I see somebody might be unmuted. Is it Pat Bailey? Yes. Okay, thank you for hearing that. Yeah, so like I was saying, trafficking in persons is becoming a big issue for a lot of us working in the shelter space, and that is why we've been giving it a little bit more attention. Without further ado, we do have quite a good program ahead of us. And before I introduce our presenter this morning, as indicated on the invitation, we will be looking at exploitation and grooming, the difference between gender-based violence and trafficking, but some of the differences there, indicators, which is something we all, those telltale things will really be helpful, and some next steps. So I'm going to introduce you to Amy. Um, and Amy is our presenter this morning. Thank you, Amy, once again for engaging with us and agreeing to avail yourself for this morning's program. So, Amy Arnold worked as a law enforcement officer for 14 years in the US. She has resided in South Africa for the past 6 years and currently works for Unchain Our Children. She investigates tip-offs of human trafficking cases and trains law enforcement in South Africa on the PACOTIP Act. And I think, Amy, you're going to just unpack that a little bit for us briefly. National policies and interviewing skills and more. So over to you, Amy. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'll say that the PACO TIP Act is just the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act. Sometimes we'll shorten it today to the TIP Act. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you guys this morning. My mom worked in a domestic violence shelter pretty much my whole life. Growing up, she always volunteered there. She always had a heart for women in those situations and volunteered there. And I spent a lot of time there. If a woman came in with kids or something, my mom would often bring me, and I was playing with kids. I mean, I was just a kid, so I didn't know much difference. I was happy to play with whomever. So, kind of a legacy of working with domestic violence victims and gender-based violence in our family. Also in the States, for a couple of my years there, I was specifically a domestic violence detective. So I am familiar with it, but I'm open to learning from you guys. It's been a while since I've worked in that space, although the trafficking space overlaps it a lot. And I'll just say today's program, we're going to go through all sorts of topics, going to just barely touch on a lot of things. And you might think, what are we doing here? Why are we talking about this? But it all intertwines. And I think a lot of you guys in the space that you're in will know that. All right, I'm going to start by sharing. Let me get my presentation up here. Let's see. Can you guys all see that? Okay, cool. Thank you. One thumbs up. That's all I need. Um, I will have time for questions throughout as we go because I don't want everybody to wait to the end and then forget. Okay, and we can certainly have a break in the middle if someone just remind me around 10, or if I get to a good stopping point, if I think about it, we can have a quick 5-minute body break or whatever you guys need. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to show you, I got a piece of paper with the word me on it. Okay, just talking about me. Now, I'm I'm pretty strong. Okay, me is my paper's pretty strong. Okay, I can't really tear it like this, right? However, if I just poke a little hole in it, okay, see, I poked a little hole in it with my pen. It's very easy to tear. Now, what I just did, okay, I just gave myself a vulnerability and I exploited it. All right. And I talk a lot about exploitation at the beginning because if you don't understand the basis of exploitation, you're not going to understand trafficking. All trafficking is for the purpose of exploitation, but not all exploitation is trafficking. All right. So I'm not sure where everyone's level is on their understanding of trafficking or exploitation or not. But pretty much all my trainings, I start with this little video. Just gives you a little bit of background, make sure we all have a good basic understanding. You should be able to hear the sound, but just speak up if I need to turn it up or someone shoot a chat message.
Exploitation is defined as treating someone unfairly in order to gain an advantage. Exploitation is the foundation of many other injustices. It is seen throughout the prostitution system and is the sole reason why people are groomed and trafficked. Exploitation can take on the form of many things. Although we most often think of exploitation for sex and labor, it can also be present when not paying a fair price for a piece of fruit or a handmade gift. No matter the type, the person being exploited is being taken advantage of. They are being used in an unfair, immoral, or illegal way in order for someone else to gain benefit. Usually, this is money, but it could also be favors or status. Some groups of people are more vulnerable to exploitation, like minority groups, the uneducated, and children with no family structure. However, there is a common thread moving throughout these groups. That is financial strain. When someone is under financial strain and cannot pay for basic necessities, they become desperate. And desperate people will do anything, even if it means getting exploited. For instance, if you have not worked in months and someone offers you a job for less than minimum wage, wouldn't you take it? If you are a mother and your kids have not eaten in several days and someone offers you money for sex, would you feel like you have much choice in the matter? But as vulnerable as the desperate and those under financial strain are to exploitation, it's important to remember that everyone has vulnerabilities. Vulnerability is defined as the state of being exposed to the possibility of attack or harm, either physically or emotionally. You see, vulnerability actually comes first, and after it is found, exploitation is the next step. Take a door, for example. If the lock is fragile, then that is the door's vulnerability. To exploit this vulnerability, one would simply need to take a hammer to break the lock and thus gain entry. Vulnerability is not limited by race, gender, or economic status. A successful businessman can have just as many vulnerabilities as a teenager. Now that smartphones have reached every corner of the globe, exploitation can be accomplished without any face-to-face contact. It targets anyone with a vulnerability. A girl facing the divorce of her parents will have vulnerabilities like loneliness, confusion, and sadness. Where will she turn for affirmation and support? Her smartphone with all of her friends and followers just waiting to comfort her. Online exploiters can easily disguise themselves and blend in. They search through social media looking for vulnerabilities and will then use the grooming process to gain trust. They can be sitting anywhere in the world and exploit multiple people at the same time. A teenager on a gaming app gets invited to play with someone they do not know. A friendly chat begins with a stranger, and a false friendship is formed. The teenager begins to trust this person, and over time, secrets are shared. Many times, sexual photos are exchanged and then used as blackmail. This is a growing form of exploitation called sextortion, and it can be achieved 100% online. So whether it is a prostituted person on the street, a parentless child begging for food, or a lonely and confused teenager, vulnerabilities exist, and therefore exploitation can occur. Exploitation takes place among every race and socio-economic class. No one is exempt.
Okay, so there are going to be a couple of videos you watch throughout this, and if you hear it kind of focusing on prostitution system, it's because those videos were made to fight the decriminalization of prostitution in this country, which I'm very against decriminalizing it. But also, you notice I cut those videos short. But if you kind of say, man, they're talking about prostitution a lot, that's the reason why. But I found I can use them for so many other trainings, not just that cause. So I use them a lot. Okay, so the vulnerable. I know we're going to judge a book by its cover, but do we think these people look vulnerable? Okay, I think we can all agree yes. What about her? She may not look vulnerable like we might think, but she could have vulnerabilities, right? Same as him. We don't know what's gone on in their lives. We don't know if someone's going through a divorce, if someone just lost someone close to them, lost a job. The point is, we all have vulnerabilities, all right? But there are some big groups of people, some more generic, not generic categories, but broader groups that we can say are the most vulnerable. And here are some of those groups: migrants or ethnic minorities. Now, why might they be vulnerable? Well, especially if you've been smuggled or you come over to the country illegally, you don't have papers, right? You've come illegally, you're already committing a crime, and that's going to make you vulnerable. People are going to know that. They're going to use that against you. And yeah, they get caught up into trafficking a lot. I spend a lot of time on news outlets. They ask me questions after a case breaks out about smuggling versus trafficking. And I just, not to be funny, but I kind of say, look, give it an hour or a day, and the smuggling will turn into trafficking because now they're part of a big vulnerable group. People with low self-esteem, okay, so those are the emotional vulnerabilities. Minors without parents, guardians, children in the welfare system. Children by nature are more vulnerable. Physical or intellectual disabilities. All right, we had a case down in the Eastern Cape where a mom was trafficking her own daughter every day. The daughter never left the bedroom because she was crippled. Okay, and the mom was getting paid for everyone to come have sex with her. So physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, she couldn't do anything about it. Super vulnerable. Substance abuse addicts. Okay, I think we all have known somebody in our lives who got addicted to either drugs or alcohol, and they are very easy to manipulate. When you dangle that carrot in front of them, they're very, very vulnerable. Adverse childhood experiences, people who've experienced something It's a bad experience. Maybe it's rape at an early age. Maybe it's other sort of trauma, but they are more vulnerable. People identify as LGBTQI plus, but the most vulnerable by far is financial instability, low income, or debt. Okay, this is what gets people. When people are recruited, when we talk about trafficking, people are recruited in trafficking. They're recruited by false promises of three things. Okay. Um, Man, I wish if we were in person, I could have a little bit more interaction. I don't think I can see the chat, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Maybe not chat, but maybe unmute yourself and someone take a guess at one of the three false promises people get hooked into. We got time, so I want to see what you guys know. So just unmute and give me something you think it might be.
There's often a promise of work.
Yes. Look at that. Employment. Well done. Let's see. We're even going in order. Okay, there's two more. Anybody else? False
Joe, your hand is up.
relationship. Sorry, I missed that.
I think I can also add, especially in South Africa, there's the false promise is that there will be a place for them to stay. So some sort of a financial security and security for their family.
Yes. Yep, that's not one of my top three, but that is all very intertwined. You're correct. The second one is, and these are no particular order, but education. All right, we've had issues with soccer trials and sports things where they say, they say, look, your child has a lot of promise. Let us take him to this other country. We're going to give him education. We're going to train him up. He's going to be a soccer star. All right. So the false promise of education. And what parent doesn't want a better life for their child, right? So it's easy to fall into that. And the last one is relationship. All right. This false promise of these boyfriends and grooming, which you're going to talk about later. Speaking of employment, do you guys know probably a lot of you guys have heard about the Myanmar case. So last year, give you a recap, last year, 23 South Africans were brought home from Myanmar who were trafficking in a cyber compound. Okay. And when they found it, they did this bust. There was like 7,000 victims in this huge compound, and they were forced to scam people online. So cyber compound is a new trend. That's a new form of trafficking. Everyone thinks of labor and sex, and it's true. Those are the biggest categories of exploitation, but cyber stuff is coming on fast. So they were promised. There was a lot of red flags, but people are either uneducated or they're so blinded by the hope, right? They're so desperate. So they were told they're going to get paid in American dollars, which is a huge red flag because you're not going to the US. Their flight tickets were paid for, all right? And then when they got to Thailand, so they thought they were going to a job in Thailand. They got to Thailand, their passports and everything were taken away from them. Huge red flag. But at that point, they may not have done anything about it. Then they were taken in a van and crossed the border into Myanmar. All right. And then they got stuck in this place. Given leftover food, spoiled food, tortured, worked 16-hour days, couldn't leave, and were forced to, commit cyber crimes or scam people. So that's just the latest. That's one of the biggest stories happening here. Now, when we talk about trafficking, a country is usually either a destination, a source, or a transit country. So a destination country is going to be your developed countries, your first world countries. All right. Source is going to be your underdeveloped countries, your third world countries. And transit is going to deal with how a country is positioned, but Amy's also definition of the transit country is a corrupt country. All right. So I want you guys again just to unmute and just tell me, where do you think South Africa is? Which category do we fall in?
Third world?
The third world, the source country.
Third world country.
Third world, got a couple for third world. Okay.
Transit.
Transit. Yeah.
Gil
That's good. I
Hammond.
get.
Sorry, Amy, I see the hand up from Gil.
Okay. Thank you
I
for the
don't-
hands because I can't, because I'm screen sharing, I cannot see the
Yeah.
hand or the, so if you can monitor that. Yes.
There's a hand up from Gil. So when you get a chance, just indicate and then, but I see the hand is on.
Go,
Gil, I have
go.
you.
Yes.
Okay. If I see it again, okay, I see the
Okay. If
hand
you
is
see it, please just call on it because I can't
Sure.
see everybody. But basically, you're all correct. Okay. Unfortunately, we're all three, and that is very unique. Often a country is maybe everyone's one usually, but sometimes there's two. But to hit all three is very unique. And I bring this up because when I'm back in America, so I'm a missionary, so we raise funds to come here. Everyone's like, "Are you in South Africa? Because it's the worst." And I was like, "No, I don't think South Africa is the worst at fighting trafficking, but you're very unique, and you have this, and I see this as a lot of opportunity to do something about it. You guys are first world. You are first world and third world. I've never seen a country with one foot in both like you have. I explained to people in America, I said, look, here's how South Africa works. We have this thing called load shedding, and it's power outages because we don't have enough power to go around because the system is broken. I said, but there is an app that tells you when the power is going to go off, and that shouldn't exist. And that blows people's minds. But you are both. You are still seen as a city of gold here in Johannesburg. People from all over Africa want to come to South Africa because they believe in the jobs. Um, you guys touch 6 countries, 2 oceans, first and third largest airport on the continent. So we're big time transit. We've seen people come from Eastern Europe, come through South Africa, and then get traffic out to another country. Why did they come all the way down to South Africa? It was to get fake documents. The traffickers know to get fake documents just to run them through South Africa. So just some uniqueness. I like to let everybody know kind of what we're up against when we're fighting this. We're very unique as a country fighting this. Okay, grooming. And we're talking about predatory grooming, right? I'm not talking about fixing your hair, brushing your teeth, or that sort of stuff. But it's building a relationship, trust, or emotional connection with someone in order to manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. So I'm going to show you another video very similar to the other one, but it's going to talk you through the stages of grooming. If you were to Google stages of grooming, you might see a list of 4, you might see a list of 7 with these subsections. I've grouped it into a list of 6. So this is my stages of grooming, but it includes everything that's out there, everything that I've researched. I've just ordered them this way.
No child dreams of becoming a prostitute when they grow up. So when you see a prostituted person, you must ask yourself, how did they get here? Did they willingly choose this as their profession? Of course not. Along with the vulnerabilities that were exploited, they were groomed. Grooming is the practice of preparing or training someone for a particular purpose or activity. Grooming takes time. Grooming is about trust. Grooming is relational. Predatory grooming is all of these things, but it is also psychological. It is gaining power and dominance over another person through strategic manipulation. And because humans have a desire to connect with others, it can be difficult to determine whether someone is simply being nice or if they have other motives. The process of grooming has 6 stages. The first stage is targeting. This is when a groomer finds their victim. Groomers often target other family members, visit places where there are large gatherings of youth like schools, orphanages, malls, and concerts, or search online. Stage 2 is friendship. This is when they gain the victim's trust. Without trust, the groomer will not be able to control the victim during the later stages. So whether the groomer starts as a stranger or someone the victim already knows, during this stage they become more friendly. They begin to push boundaries and test limits, but in a way that can be easily explained if the victim grows suspicious. This can be done through a romantic relationship, as a caring friend, or by the use of power. Stage 3 is fulfilling a need. Here, the groomer plays a role to fill a gap in the emotional or physical support of the victim. This is accomplished by being a listening ear, through intimacy, by feeding a drug addiction, or by fulfilling financial or survival needs such as food or shelter. Stage 4 is isolation. This is the breaking down of all other relationships. Isolation from others causes the victim to grow more dependent on the groomer. The groomer gives extra love and attention, which makes the victim want to spend more time with them. At the same time, they will undermine all other relationships with statements like, "No one understands you like I do." Stage 5 is sexualizing the relationship. Here, the groomer starts with desensitizing and progresses to abuse. Desensitization might include exposing the victim to sexual content or inappropriate touching so as to normalize it. Then, because the victim trusts the groomer and is now dependent, they will endure the abuse. Stage 6 is maintaining control. Here, the groomer must balance causing pain with providing relief from that pain. Even though the groomer causes the addiction, physical harm, or threatens to break up, the victim will endure these things as long as the groomer balances it with relief by providing drugs, protection from others' harm, or not breaking off the relationship. The victim is trapped in this abuse cycle because they can't afford to lose the only relationship they have left. Getting through these 6 stages does not happen quickly. Groomers are not afraid to spend money and time on the process. It is an investment. So when we see the prostituted person on the street, we must ask ourselves, is this their chosen profession, or were they groomed for exploitation?
So that last little bit they talked about where it takes money and time and it's an investment, that is the hook that gets people. I had a young lady from South Africa, young 20s, about to move to America. A travel agency actually caught this and asked us to investigate it to see if they thought something was fishy was going on. And she was going for a relationship and for schooling, I guess, because he was going to put her through culinary school over there. She'd only talked to him online. He had paid for some of her stuff here, and she was absolutely convinced that it was her boyfriend and she was going to go and they were going to get married and she was going to get an education. And it was so hard. And I saw lots of red flags. I mean, as an American, watching how this guy even just wrote a letter, like the visa letter to immigration, I saw so many red flags. I said, look, Americans don't sign a letter kind regards or regards. Okay. We don't use that terminology at all. We say sincerely in a formal letter. So just little stuff that I was able to pick up on particularly, but trying to convince this woman that her dream, right? Dream, getting out of moving to America, having a job, having a relationship, that her dream was alive was incredibly difficult. And it's because of the time. She said, why would he spend so much time on me? Like, we've been talking for a long time. He's given me money. This isn't just a scam. But that's what they do, and they're very good at it. So again, these are the stages, and then that maintaining control. You guys at shelters will know this better than most. It's just the abuse cycle, right? That's all this maintaining control is. It's showing love and it's withholding the love. It's yes, I will hit you, but I will protect others from abusing you. That sort of thing. Okay. And I used to get so frustrated as a police officer when I'd run into people who would just say, other police officers that just said, why doesn't she just leave? We've all heard that. Why doesn't she just leave? Well, it's because of this. And it's because they don't have the understanding of the trauma bonding, and everything that happens in the abuse cycle. So grooming online, okay, it's not much different. It's basically just using tech or the internet to build a relationship with somebody and then tricking them, pressuring or forcing them into doing something sexual, like sending images or videos of themselves. All right, we're gonna watch a video from a guy on TikTok. It's about 90 seconds, but I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourselves afterwards and tell me what stages of grooming are you seeing in him, if you think he's groomed.
Your parents screwed up. It's okay to say so. That's why I made a Patreon, so that we could talk about it, so that we could connect in a way that has more privacy, so that we could talk to each other in a way that's more open and stuff that we wouldn't share like in the comments of a video like this. I think you're worthy and valuable, and I wanted to spend more connected time with you, healing together and hearing your deeply inspiring stories.
Okay. Sorry guys, I'm very interactive. Even online, I like to hear back from you guys. So what are some red flags? What are some grooming stages that we saw in that video?
I
For me,
think it's friendship.
Friendship, yep. Connie, go ahead.
Friendship, fulfilling a need, and isolation.
Yep. Great. Linda, do you have anything to add? I see that you're unmuted. I can't see everybody, but I can see a few of you guys.
Okay, no, I would have said exactly the same thing. It was 2, 3, and 4: friendship, fulfilling, and isolation.
Yep. Yeah,
I
and
think
look,
that I
he's
also find
he's
it
Go ahead.
I find it interesting that he's got a Patreon, which means
Yeah,
there would be exchanging of money involved somewhere.
right. That was my understanding of Patreon as well, but I wonder if they also, but yeah, it seems like that's some sort of result later. And look, a lot of these people they'll desensitize and they'll end up paying for photos. So maybe that's where he's heading. Now he's got it all, right? He's targeting just by being on TikTok, right? Like just by having that, he's targeting young people. You guys saw the friendship, the fulfilling a need, very emotional need, right? What is he offering? He's offering a listening ear. He is giving compliments like crazy. Think of teenagers. What teenager doesn't want to hear that you're valuable, you're worthy? All right. I mean, I'm not far from being a teenager anymore, and I want to hear those things, right? We all do. It's our human nature. He's isolating them. He's taking them to Patreon, taking them off of TikTok. He's also isolating them by the very first thing he said, very first words out of his mouth were your parents screwed up. What teen or kid or youth or whoever doesn't believe that at some point? We thought that, okay? Of our parents, probably. I'm sure my kids have thought that of me. So it's that isolation already from the family unit. So he's got them. We just don't know what he's going to do on steps 5 and 6, but he's quickly on his way there. Sextortion. The other video touched on that, but it's blackmailing someone to get them to create or share sexual images or videos of themselves. Okay, it's a term you should know. Another term you should be aware of is CSAM. Okay, it stands for child sexual abuse material. We don't say child porn anymore. Okay, so this is the kind of the new term that's coming, although South African law will still say child pornography, but it's moving towards this term. So if you hear it, and possessing, receiving, or distributing CSAM images, whether obtained by manipulation or not, results in harm to the child featured in the materials. What's also important to know is if you guys were to come across this and someone were to show you and someone were to say, send you a photo of their kid and say, look, this photo of my kid is all over the internet or all over whatever. Now that that is on your phone and on your device, you cannot send it to anybody, even like the investigator in the case. Okay. If this happens to you, you need to go through the right channels, and you can contact us, Unchain Our Children. I'll give you our number at the end, but we can help you get the right digital forensic person to get that off your phone. Because again, as soon as you send it on, even though you say, I'm sending it to the investigator in the case, okay, you're distributing CSAM images. All right. And it's illegal. So just know that. And also, I wouldn't advise to delete it, because you're going to want the evidence. You're going to want the evidence as they build the case. Okay.
Sorry, Amy. There's a hand from
Yes.
Pulani.
Thank you.
Pulani.
Go ahead.
Pulani, you can unmute and Pulani, and we have a hand from Geneva.
Okay.
Geneva, do you want to go while I'm not sure, Pulani, or do you want to put something in the chat box, or is your sound? Otherwise, Geneva, you can go first.
I'll say that in about 5 minutes, very soon, we'll be at the end of this section, and we'll definitely have time for questions. If people are figuring out the unmuting right now, in just a few minutes, we'll do a question on this particular section. If that works. Okay, I'm gonna keep going on. If you have a question, just write it down. We'll get to a question section in just a moment. Okay, so talking about sextortion, I'm going to show another video. I do a lot of videos because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, and there's a lot of organizations out there who've created some amazing stuff. This one's from A21. So, and this is on sextortion.
So, test papers from last week. Some of them good, some of them not so good. I think we all need to improve before the real thing in a couple of weeks. Thank you. That was excellent. That was all right. Have a look at comments on there. That needs work, as does that. That was okay. Nelson, I don't know what's going on here. Can you see me after the lesson, please? That was excellent. Good. Comments on that. I think that needs work. That was excellent. Okay, so characterisation and criticism for next week, please. Everyone. Nelson. Nelson.
You have one job. Yeah, goalkeeper. Pretty stuck in the net. Joe Moss.
So that video was made by A21. They're an international anti-trafficking organization. And they have a campaign called Can You See Me? And you can Google and find a ton of those videos, but it's a really good one on sextortion. And sextortion happens more to boys than girls. About 80% of victims are boys instead of girls when it comes to this. So when we think about this sort of thing, it's not a female problem. It's not they're the victims. The boys are being heavily sextorted. And just like that video kind of indicated, research found that a coordinated network of about 3,400 accounts were managed by 25 individuals. And that's why they can spend time on them and cast out a large net and be very effective because one person is working 1,000 people at once or hundreds of people. A couple other just some facts about CSAM. The pornography industry creates a lot of backdoors and apps. In 2021, pornography websites in the US received more traffic than X, Instagram, Netflix, Pinterest, and LinkedIn combined. Internet's basically putting porn in children's pockets. 1 in 10 visitors to pornography sites are children. Most often it is accidental. They misspelled a word, or they're curious about a body, and related searches came up, or they clicked on an advert or pop up. The International Child Sexual Exploitation Database, it's run by Interpol, revealed that the younger the victim, the more severe the abuse. 84% of images contain explicit sexual activity. More than 60% of unidentified victims were prepubescent. That's very young. Severe abuse images were likely to feature boys. So the more severe and violent the abuse, the boys were the victims. And 92% of visible offenders were male. Okay, I'm going to end on some more statistics here. CSAM by the age of 10. So it's saying by the age of 10, 60% of kids have viewed an image. Okay, and like we said, often that's going to be accidental. When I heard of this statistic, my kids were 9, and I quickly set them down right then and there and talked to them and said, look, this is what porn is. This is what abuse material is. And went over what to do if they see it, who to tell, that sort of thing. So it's very important to talk to kids at a very early age. I think it demystifies it. Demystifies it. By age 14, 31% of kids were asked to send nudes. 44% had received a nude. Okay, this isn't just looking like we saw the 60%. This is they've received it on their device. Email, tablet, phone, whatever. And 11% sent nudes back. Okay, I know this isn't a parent group I'm talking to, but a lot of you, I'm sure, are parents. And what I drill home in this one is one of the easiest ways to avoid this is to give them off their devices until they're much later. Okay, prolong that as long as possible. Okay, before we move on to the TIP Act and trafficking law, does anybody have any questions? That way we can just do questions a section at a time. You guys just help me out if a hand is raised, and I'll let Anissa moderate this, but should I continue
Thank you
on?
so much for that, Amy. Just an invitation to any of you who might have any questions or even comments. I'm still seeing Geneva and Pulani's hands up.
Okay.
If you still would like, you can unmute and ask. Alternatively, you can also use the chat, and that goes for everybody who's in attendance. Nadine's got something. Nadine, do you want to go?
Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. I just had a quick question regarding you spoke earlier about South Africans being trafficked to different countries, for exploitation and things like that. Last year, we had a situation where um, South African women were targeted to go and work in Russia. I never heard the outcome of that situation. I don't know if it was on the news or anything, but what stance does our government take on things like that? Because it was all over the news, all over the influencers even took to this thing and were recruiting our young people. So my question is basically just what does our government, where do we stand with things like that? And what was the aftermath when it comes to stuff like that?
That's a good question. I'm not personally familiar with any of the cases of South Africans being trafficked to Russia. The South African government would adamantly oppose anything having to do with trafficking in persons. When you go back and look at this Myanmar case, and Durko and these official channels will come out with an official statement. They're adamantly fighting against it. So I'm not sure that would be their official stance. I know a ton of fantastic government officials. I always preface this because especially when I teach law enforcement and NPA and DSD, and I get very hard on them as a law enforcement official. I tell them, we point blankly talk about corruption, but there are some amazing men and women in positions that are fighting it, but we cannot ignore the corruption issue in this country. So the official answer will always be that they're going to be fighting against it, and some people are, but the truth is we have so many gaps in the system that it's just not working right now. So I don't know anything personally about the Russia situation, but South Africa is walking the fine line of we have great legislation, we have great law, and the officials will always stand by that. However, we're not fixing the gaps in the system, and part of that is due to organized crime and corruption.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer.
Okay. Okay, I
Anybody
think I'll move on.
else? Okay.
We'll have plenty of time to do more questions later. You can always come back to this section. I just wanted to briefly pause before moving on. But yeah, we'll have lots of times for questions. Okay, I'm going to move on to the Trafficking in Persons Act. Okay, so I call it TIP. I mean, everyone, we all shorten it to TIP. So we're going to talk about I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of legal background because it's important for you to know. Even when I teach, parent groups or citizen groups, not just when I'm teaching my law enforcement, I like to go into a little bit of law. It's important we understand. So the scope of the TIP Act is if it was committed within South Africa wholly or partly. So what the scope is talking about is when can we use our laws, the South African laws, okay? So if part of it or all of it was committed in South Africa, or if the crime was committed outside of South Africa, but the trafficked person is a citizen or resident of South Africa, the offender is a citizen or resident of South Africa, or any part of the offense occurred in South Africa. So these are broad terms, and it's great news for us because as government, they don't have to figure out, well, what's the law in Malawi? What's the law in the Ukraine or the UK? Because it happened over there. We can apply our trafficking law to any situation that these things occur. And having said that, most countries around the world have very similar, if they have a Trafficking in Persons Act, it's similar to ours. People are following these same kind of 3 elements that we're going to talk about, okay? All right, this is the last one of these videos for today, I promise. And when I send out my presentation later, I'll send you a link to where to get these. But on the Unchain Our Children org.za, you'll see that again later, but you can go through and find these videos. These stats also, let me say, are from 2022, but they're still pretty close to what they are today. They don't come out with this report every year. So I don't get a chance to update it yearly.
To traffic something means to deal or trade in something illegal. Most commonly, there is drug trafficking, firearm trafficking, and human trafficking, or trafficking in persons. Although drug trafficking is the most profitable crime in the world, trafficking in persons has now surpassed firearms and is second. This is because you can rent out and use a person multiple times a day, year after year. Trafficking in persons is a $150 billion a year industry. Worldwide sexual exploitation and forced labor each account for 39% of trafficking victims. A combination of the two make up another 10%. Forced criminal activity is 10% and 2% are trafficked for other reasons. In South Africa, 48% are trafficked for sexual exploitation, 43% for labor, and 9% for other reasons like begging, marriage, illegal adoption, and organ removal. More than twice as many women are victims of trafficking compared to men, and a shocking 60% of victims are children. As mentioned in previous Let's Talk episodes, exploitation is the foundation of many crimes, including trafficking. In fact, the purpose of trafficking in persons is for exploitation. The idea that trafficking victims are snatched off the street, taken away in a van, and locked in a room rarely happens. Instead, victims are vulnerable people who have been deceived by false promises of employment, education, or a relationship. The law defines trafficking based on 3 elements: the acts, what is done, the means, how it is done, and the purpose, why it is done. Together, these 3 elements equal trafficking in persons. When someone responds to a social media ad for a waitressing job, only to arrive and be put on the streets to be sexually exploited, they have been trafficked. They were recruited and deceived for sexual exploitation. When a man is taken from one city to another, his family is given money for his consent, and he's forced to work 7 days a week without a fair wage. He was delivered, payment was given for consent, and exploited for labor, and therefore he was trafficked. There are many ways people become victims, but as long as one of each element is present, it is trafficking in persons. When it comes to children under the age of 18, the means does not need to be present. All you need is acts and a purpose for it to be child trafficking.
Okay, so like the video said, here's that chart again. This is the law. I just grouped it up so everyone can easily see, especially my law enforcement officials, they can easily see what they need to find. So acts, again, what is done? Were they delivered? Were they transferred? Were they harbored? Were they sold? Means, how was it done? Was it done because a gun was to their head? Was it done because they were kidnapped? Was it done because they were lied to about a job? And why it is done, the purpose. So what's great about the South African law is it says any exploitation. It doesn't start to list it and limit us, okay? So basically, there's one from each column. It's trafficking in persons. And that's what I teach my law enforcement and my social development people as they're doing these screenings. This is what you have to look for in a habit. Often will. I'm going to hide my video for a second because I think my internet just came up and said it was unstable. So let me see if this helps at all. So we're going to go through a scenario. And again, I'm going to ask you guys to unmute or write in the chat. And Anissa can help me see what the answers are. But I want us to pick out, okay? We're going to just pick out what is the act and it means the purpose of this scenario. So Lorado traveled voluntarily on her own to Pretoria. She stays with other girls in Sophia's house while they wait for their waitressing job to begin. Sophia often houses girls for this reason. So what act is being done here? What is Sophia doing? Can you guys still hear me? You with me?
I see a
What's your
hand from
Not
Megan.
transferring.
Megan?
The transfers.
transfers?
I think Sophia was she recruited and she delivered and transports.
Well, okay.
So
Let's
I
keep in
see in
mind
the
that,
group, Amy, on the
uh-huh,
chat, so there's
I'm in a
answers
meet.
around recruiting, harboring.
okay. So
So
let me
those are
say
some
right now, I
of the
think
C's.
we're all imagining the scenario, but based on the information we have, all we can really say is harboring, right? Loretta voluntarily on her own to Pretoria. Now someone recruited her, but we don't know who. We don't know if it's Sophia, right? Or maybe he wasn't recruited. Maybe she, honestly is going for this thing. But right now, and she came on her own, so she wasn't transported by anybody. All right. I mean, she was, but no one that we know that was dealt with it. So right now we have harboring. All right. That's the main one we have here. And often you're going to have more than one. But okay. Sorry about this. My means thing is gone. I'll just tell you what this one is. I don't know why. It's done this every once in a while on this. So after they leave Sophia's house, instead of going to a restaurant, they are taken to a factory to work. Okay. I see my means column is gone, but you guys can remember. So this is going to be fraud or deception, right? Because they thought they were going to a restaurant, waitressing job. Now they're getting taken to a factory. It's important here to know, and in the law, the TIP Act in the law, it says the consent of a person is immaterial when the means have been used. Meaning, I can't consent to something if someone's threatening to harm me. I can't consent to something if I've been kidnapped. So that whole means column, again, I apologize, it's not on the screen. It doesn't matter if it's consent. All right. And I've talked to officers a lot about this. They say, yeah, but they agreed to come here. Okay. And then I have to educate them on this part. Okay. And then lastly is the purpose. Upon arrival, Loretta realizes they are meant to work and live in the factory. Okay. She manages to escape before the work begins. So obviously she was going to be used for labor. But the question is, she escaped before any work began. So is it still trafficking? And for time's sake, I'll go and answer that because I always get a lot of mixed reviews. And the answer is yes, it is still trafficking. And the reason is because it's the purpose. It was why was it going to be done? Now I tell officers, and I get fight back on this a lot. I understand it's harder to prove if the exploitation hasn't happened, but so much better to get someone before the exploitation has happened. And you still have to investigate it. I tell my officers, you still have to investigate it. You can still prove it. It's just a lot harder. So don't think that because someone escaped, it's just not trafficking anymore. It still can be. Trafficking in children, we learn it's below the age of 18. And we know that you need the acts, means, and purpose for adults. But for the trafficking in children, again, you just need the acts and purpose. And once again, it's immaterial if they consent. Child can't consent anyway. A couple of special additions to the acts, means, and purpose is if adoption is involved, any person who adopts a child, facilitated or secured through legal or illegal means, if it's for the purpose of exploitation, is guilty of the offense. And what's great is this is guilty of trafficking, and trafficking holds a much higher penalty than other crimes in this country. Marriage. Any person who concludes a forced marriage with another person for the purpose of exploitation is guilty of the offense. All right. So briefly, I'm going to touch on Ukutwala because this is what the government says about this. This is not Amy Arnold's opinion. This is what the South African government has written in a policy. The practice of Ukutwala with children, so children being under 18, are considered exploitative and non-consensual. I understand we're going to have cultures that disagree with that, but we have traditional law and we have legal law like the acts, And in this country, everyone encourages traditional and cultural law until it bumps heads with the law, the main law. And then the main law is going to win. So, and also the practice of ukutwala with adults is possible and can be considered not exploitative as long as there is consent between the adults. All right, tip versus SOM. Tip we know is trafficking in persons. SOM is smuggling of migrants. Okay, and like I said before, I get asked to go on the news quite a bit when a case breaks out and some news, it'll splash and say, you know, child trafficking ring busted in Joburg, or, you know, this many people found hidden in a room. And they often are confused between trafficking and smuggling. So there are three main differences. Again, these are differences that the government has outlined in a policy. I just teach that policy. So smuggling must cross a national border, right? And trafficking doesn't. Like I said, I've seen mothers traffic their own child in their own bedroom every day and never leave the house. Smuggling is a crime against the state, not the individual. People can be smuggled voluntarily or willingly, right? There's no means present, that whole middle column. If that middle column exists, we need to start looking at not smuggling anymore, and is it trafficking? You have these stories of these. I'm in Joburg, but you know, we see these stories of like 80 Ethiopians were running down the streets naked of Sandringham. This happened months ago. And they're very quick to say, you know, smuggling, and they were sending these people back to their homes, and they were not looking at trafficking. And they said, but Amy, they agreed to come here. I said, yeah, they probably agreed to be smuggled, but they didn't agree to be put in a room with 80 of them and no food and locked up. Like, they didn't agree, they can't consent to that. And then lastly, smuggling can be committed without exploitation. All right, so the smuggler's paid for a service, no one else benefits. I want to cross the border, I give you money, I crawl into your boot, we get out, we shake hands, we're done. Okay, now it's illegal, yes, but I wasn't exploited, and therefore it's not trafficking. All right, we're going to look at a scenario real quick and decide what it is. Is it trafficking or smuggling? Gerald is from Zimbabwe and is desperate for a better life. He meets a man named Nico who takes people across the border into South Africa. Before they leave Zim, Gerald pays Nico 25,000 Rand, crawls into a hidden compartment of the vehicle. Once they arrive in South Africa, Nico lets Gerald out of the car. All right, I think we can all pretty much agree, I won't ask for hands right now, that this is smuggling. Okay? Now, what if this happens? After he gets out of the car, Nico points out a factory nearby and says, hey, my friend Steve is the manager and is always looking for hard workers. Gerald thanks him and begins to walk towards the factory. Now, what do you think? Do you think it's trafficking or smuggling? You're just thinking in your head. All right. Right now, it's still smuggling, but it's heading in a different direction. I tell my investigators, you should be perking up now, because now we could be getting involved in trafficking if Nico knows, if Steve is about to exploit them, and if Nico knows about it, then they both can be charged. All right. Hey, if you hang on to me for just another few minutes, we will take a break as I switch my slides out after this, if that's cool. So GBV, you guys know this better than me, better than most. Any harmful act perpetrated against a person's will based on gender differences. Okay, that's kind of the general definition I found. It's rooted in structural gender inequality, power imbalances, and discrimination. So who are our victims of TIP or GBV, right? They're not limited. They can be male, female, young, old, different races. It doesn't matter. That's our TIP victims and our GBV victims. And it's also our offenders, right? I've seen young people recruit and traffic other young people. I've seen old people do it. Okay. There's no one more trustworthy than a granny. So a lot of people think. So they're using older females to recruit and to groom children now to trafficking because who doesn't trust a granny, right? So our victims and offenders of TIP and GBV are pretty similar. There's so many overlaps with what you guys do and what I do. I can see how hard it would be to spot something. And that's what I want you guys to learn by the end of this session is when does it tip from GBV to trafficking? What's that line? When does it cross it? All right, we talk about abuse in both of them. All right, what abuse takes place? Well, it's physical, it's emotional, and psychological. They happen in both. So we still kind of can't figure out the difference between GBV and TIP until we get to the what and the why. Okay? So the what is they're using power and abuse and dominance, but the why is the difference. Okay? Correct me if I'm wrong. Gender-based violence is personal. It's personal power and abuse and dominance. That's the overwhelming factor and reason why. And with trafficking, it's not personal, it's business. It's transactional and it's exploitative. Okay?
Amy, sorry, I see
Yes.
there's a hand from Cindy. You can indicate when you're ready for her.
Okay. Go ahead, Cindy.
Cindy, you've got your hand up. Can you unmute? Or if you want to put something in the chat.
And again, in just a couple minutes, we'll have a question.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Anissa. Good morning, everyone. I'm really struggling with connection. I don't know what's happening. But I just wanted to ask, in terms of the TIP Act, is there a way that shelters can operationalize the TIP Act in order to ensure that victims' protection or legal compliance are effective in terms of the intersectoral correlation, especially in under-resourced communities? I don't know if I'm audible. My Wi-Fi is really acting up today.
Yeah, so hear you. We heard you, and that's a fantastic question. I just want to make sure I understand you, but intersectorial collaboration is imperative, and I'll show you a chart at the end of a flow chart of how to work with a victim and where they need to go next and the next steps, and maybe that can help you. Also, if you go to, again, I'll tell you again, but unchainourchildren.org.za and our resources, we have a big flyer with this with the acts, means, and purpose with the trafficking on it. You're more than welcome to download that and have that posted, and then you can kind of decide and have a reminder of when it's trafficking, and then what do I need to do next. I'll give you some phone numbers and next steps at the end of today. Okay, so hopefully that'll help. So anybody else with a question? We're gonna have a question section in just a second, right before a body break. But basically the point is GBV is more personal and TIP is transactional and exploitative, and that's when it changes. And when we go back to this chart, when I think of GBV, I think it's living mostly in this means thing, right? Maybe there was an act done, but normally the abuse and the power and the dominance all happens. This is what we're seeing. So when you're looking at a victim or you're hearing a story of somebody and you start to recognize an act or purpose, then we need to start thinking about TIP, trafficking. All right. We're going to go through a scenario. And is it TIP or is it GBV? Okay. Nathan and Grace have been in a relationship for 5 years. Nathan works full time and expects Grace to stay at home and make sure the house is clean and take care of their child. Nathan has told Grace that she's not allowed to leave the house without letting him know, and she doesn't have a social life or any friends. Occasionally, Nathan gets physically violent, but Grace has never been seriously injured. Okay. Is this trafficking or GBV? I'll let someone just put it in the chat. Anissa, you can tell me the answer. You guys just want to write GBV or tip. What do you think this is at this point in the story? I'm seeing stuff go in the chat. I can't see the response. What are people saying, Anissa?
GBV.
GBV.
Okay,
I
perfect.
think sorry, so Amy, everybody's indicated that it's a GBV. So there's agreement
Perfect.
there.
Okay. Okay, good. I knew that would be an easy one for you guys. Okay, so let's move the scenario along. The land they live on is divided into plots, and four other families live within the same property, but in separate houses. Nathan also has Grace clean the houses of the other families as well. The other families pay Nathan for her services. Grace has no access to the money. Okay. I think without asking you guys, I can pretty sure say now it has moved to the tip. Right now, we know that she can't leave. She's now being exploited. Her services, she's now domestic servitude is a type of exploitation, and she doesn't have access to this money. Okay. All right. Any questions on this section before we take a little 5-minute body break, stretch break?
So, Amy, a lot of people in the group have responded to that one by saying it's a trafficking in persons based
Perfect.
on the information
Perfect.
that you
It is.
provided at the bottom, right?
Yep, that's exactly correct. Okay, if there aren't any questions on this section, again, you can always ask me later. Anise, if it's fine with you, it's 10:20. Do you think we need just like a little 5-minute break? Maybe just as safe. Let's see. Anise, is that fine with you?
Yeah, sure. Amy, that's fine.
Okay.
There's just a request from Gil to leave the acts plus means plus purpose slide up while we take a break. Remember that we
No
probably
problem.
will be sharing, am I right, Amy? You okay with us sharing it after? So we will share the recording and
Yes,
we share the link of the
absolutely.
recording
You'll
and the presentation with participants. But yes, I'm sure Amy will be able, okay,
yes, but
to.
I'll leave that up right now. Okay. All right. Why don't we just take a quick 5 minutes and then come back at 10:25?
All right, that's fine. So everybody will see you again at 10:25. Thanks, Amy. All right. I see it's 10:25 now. I don't know, Amy, if you back on and ready to resume, or must we still give everyone another minute?
I'm good. I think by the time I get my next thing up, we'll be good to go.
All right.
I'm gonna reshare my screen. Okay, we can all see the screen, I assume.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Amy, are you ready to continue?
I'm ready. My screen is up, I
Oh.
assume. You guys can see it?
All righty.
Okay.
Yes, we can
Okay.
see it. Thanks.
Okay. Great. This next section, we're just going to talk about victim-centered approach quickly. Just how trauma affects how a victim might interact with you, and a little bit of interviewing skills, and end off with indicators and next steps. So, going to show you another video real quick. This is a movie based on a true story. I'll tell you about it later, but I just want you to watch the interaction that's taking place. What I wanted you guys to see is just the interaction, and we're gonna come back to that in a minute. I'll show you a second clip of it. How she doesn't feel believed. Right. I think we can all agree on that. She doesn't feel believed. Don't believe her. Okay. Talk about Stockholm syndrome for a moment. I think most of us have heard of this. That's an actual picture from the Stockholm incident in Sweden where the bank robbers came in. It's interesting that picture is actually taken with a pin camera that was gone through some tubing in the bank and got them down there. But basically, Stockholm syndrome usually involves strangers. Okay, it's not technically a clinical term or disorder, and as many psychologists don't like the term, it makes sense as a survival strategy, and police even encourage it in hostage situations. But with you guys, with GBV, it's not Stockholm syndrome. Okay, really what it is, if the correct term is, it's trauma bonding. All right, so where the victim and the perpetrator know each other, the emotional bond is exploited. And the two most noted features are power imbalances, that abuse cycle, and intermittent abuse followed by positive behavior. So, do trafficking victims know they're trafficking victims? No, they don't. Because actually, if someone does know they're a trafficking victim, they've either already been to like a nonprofit or an NGO and they've learned that term, or I would think that's a red flag. We've seen trafficking victims in shelters recruiting others, and they're not victims at all. They've gone in there to recruit. Okay. So they usually don't know what they are. These you might think that they know they're being abused. Maybe they know they were smuggled. They think they're criminals themselves, but they don't know they're trafficking victims. Now, do trafficking victims sometimes and often commit crimes? And the answer is yes. Okay. And we'll talk about what the police's duty is in a second when they do that. They can't be charged if it's in relationship to trafficking and they've committed another crime like prostitution. Okay. But they're being sex trafficked. They can't be charged with prostitution. Okay. Which is still illegal, by the way. A lot of people think that it's not, but it's still illegal in this country. Okay. I'm going to show you a picture on this next slide. And I want you to tell me in the chat, what do you think it is? Just write down what you think it is as quick as you can. All right. What is it? In the chat, give it to me. What do you see? Anissa, what are people saying that this is? I'm seeing them come in.
Okay, so I
It'll
see
probably be
bird
different
part,
things.
duck, bird, rabbit.
Uh-huh. Okay. Cool. That's good enough.
Bunny.
Yes. Yep. Bunnies, rabbits, ducks. Okay. Now, some of you guys who see only a duck and you see the bills, make the bill of the duck the rabbit's ears and face it around, and now you'll see the rabbit. Okay. But do rabbit and ducks look like one another? Usually, no. Okay. It's just a fun slide to show you about perception. Okay. And again, I drill this into my officers, but it's for anybody who's talking to a victim. You have two witnesses to an event or two victims, and one tells you the suspect looks like a rabbit, and the other tells you the suspect looks like a duck. We don't need to write them off as liars. Okay. And just don't believe them, because everyone's perception and trauma does something to different ones of us. Some of you guys who only saw a duck and now heard it was a rabbit can only see rabbit now. All right. Okay. Want to skip through that one really quick. Okay. In the aftermath of trauma, victims make statements that appear to be incomplete or inconsistent. They also may seek to hide or minimize behaviors they use to survive, such as appeasement, flattery. Out of fear, they will not be believed or they'll be blamed for their assault. Okay. So when you talk to a victim early on, they just come to your shelter, you talk to them now versus you talk to them in a week, you're probably going to get a lot different information out of them. All right, children are always going to need more. All right, it's just the very nature of them, right? They experience trauma differently than adults. They're going to tell you their story happened in a very different way. And depending upon the age and trauma, they might need a therapist. All right. We're not going to, because of time, we're not going to spend time discussing this. I just want to bring up, we have a lot of cultures here in South Africa, right? A lot of different cultures, very high on respect is a big culture, right? The elders, you show the elders respect, you don't question them. So what role does culture play in the way a victim might interact with a government official? Okay, this is big. I've got victims all the time who tell me, oh, well, we've tried to walk into SAPS. We tried to report something and they just told me I wasn't a victim, or they told me it wasn't a crime. And the victim walks away because of respect out of that office. Now, I was first blown away by this because there's no way anybody in America, like we're gonna push back against authority more than you guys do here. Okay, so we have to think about that and how we act with the victims. These next few slides I'm going to show you because yes.
Sorry, Linda has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to unmute?
No, sorry, it's just the network that's just running a little bit of a ruckus. Apologize.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
So the next few slides are a combination of what I showed law enforcement and I hammer into social development, but they're important for everyone to know, even especially you guys in the shelters, but also for the general public. So I'm going to skip around a lot between the TIP Act and national instructions for the police or a DSD policy, but that's, and again, you'll get all this. But they cannot be arrested or charged with a crime if it's a direct result of being trafficked. Okay, I just mentioned that. And obviously, protection and care is not conditional on gender of the victim, religious beliefs, nationality, or the victim's willingness to cooperate in legal proceedings. I have a lot of officers who put the case aside when the victim doesn't want to testify or cooperate. And by law, they're not allowed to do that. They still need to investigate. Victim assistance, no victim may be turned away simply because the alleged offense had taken place a long time ago or had been committed in the station area of another police station. A docket must still be open and transferred. So there's none of this, oh, this happened in Pretoria and you're down here in Joburg, you got to go to Pretoria. Okay. And we get victims turned away. And again, this is trafficking specific, but we get victims turned away for this all the time. Or this happened 5 years ago. I'm not going to be able to work this case. Go away. We have people telling citizens that, and they can't. It's in their national instructions. Interviewing, if the victim is a child, then the member must arrange for the appropriate adult to be present, like a parent, caregiver, or social worker. If a victim is a child or is vulnerable, he or she may be interviewed in the presence of a person of his or her preference. Now, what we need to be careful of here is that a child may choose their own perpetrator to be in there with them because it's a child, right? So if the mom is perpetrating the child and you ask the child for a person to come and interview with them, they may pick the mom, okay? And that's no good. So we have to kind of, if we think mom is involved in any way, we're going to have to steer the child in a different direction or give them someone neutral like a social worker. But it's just good to know that the child may pick their own perpetrator. Interpreters, I'll go through this quickly. Basically, you need to use separate interpreters because you don't want to cause secondary traumatization. Visas, this is a quick slide just so visas can be available for trafficking victims if they meet certain requirements, and compensation as well. So the NPA really wants me to talk about this when I teach because they say no one asks for compensation. And it's a big thing out there that we need to start asking for. So victims of trafficking can receive compensation not just for physical things, but for damage or loss, psychological or other injury, and of course, loss of income or support. And lastly, again, you'll get these. I'm just going through them quickly. Witness protection is also available if they meet certain criteria. Okay. Any questions on this really quick before we move on to our last section here? All right, I'll keep on moving on for time's sake. And again, we can catch up on questions at the very, very end. Interviewing. All right, there are some, and don't think of this as interviewing. You might think, Amy, I don't interview people. I'm not a cop. I'm not maybe I should rename this just talking with people. Okay, I use these tactics with my children when I want to get the truth out of them. Use them with anybody. You're in the grocery store and you need to build rapport with somebody because you need them to help you find something. It's just talking to people. All right. So there's some steps of the structured interview. And we think of interview, we think of just questions, right? Like, oh, you just ask a bunch of questions and you get the answers and that's it. But there's a lot more before the questions happen. You have to prepare. You have to introduce yourself. Sounds simple, but there is a way to do it. You do have to build that rapport. Then there's questions. Then you have to verify what you've heard. And then you have to depart. All right. So preparation, number of interviewers. All right. What do you think? Do you think there's one interviewer? Do you think there's two? Do you think it should be 10? Okay. I go with 1 or 2. No more than that. Any more than that, they're going to feel like they're being they've got a panel of people, they're being ganged up on. With one person, you can really build that bond. You can have that good rapport, and they may trust just one person in the room. But the great benefit about 2 is if I'm interviewing, I got someone else and my partner can be taking the notes, or my partner can be watching their body language. Okay. So I can focus on that eye contact and really engaging with them while they do the other stuff, and someone else to catch something in case you don't. Gender of interviewer, a lot of people say women must interview women. But I disagree with that. I think that probably best practice for sure. But look, women are abusers. Women are perpetrators. And if someone's been trafficked by a female, which happens quite a lot, or the recruiter, their abuser was a female, and they may not open up. Okay, so you just don't get stuck in this one must interview this gender. Be open to change if you see the victim's kind of attitude change about it. Place to conduct the interview. There's a lot of SAP stations around. They're supposed to have this victim family room or victim friendly room. And if they do, that's great, but we don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need room with perfect lighting and comfy couches and all that. It's great if you do, but you just need to make them comfortable. I did this training out in Malawi, and their police stations just basically had nothing in them. And I said, just go into the shade of a tree. Okay, just make sure they feel a little comfortable and do it where you can do it. Audio and visual recordings. Again, I'll just briefly fly through this, but if it's allowed, there's some benefits of recording, like it keeps you from having to take such meticulous notes. It depends on the jurisdiction and the laws and policy, but it can serve as useful evidence. And recording the interview minimizes re-victimization. So if victim tells me her story and I need my boss to hear it, and I need the NPA to hear it, and I need the judge to hear it, if it was recorded, then the victim just have to keep retelling their story. Okay. And also, we always just want to take thorough notes. This is a photo of a good interview posture. So again, you don't need a fancy room. You don't want anything between you and the other person. I don't want a table, because then I can't see them. I can't see their body movements. I can't see when they're clenching their fist or they're shaking their leg. This is an actual interview. The man in red is a journalist, and the other guy is an inmate in prison. And this journalist is good because he's got nothing in between them. Also, he's not facing him head on. Okay, that's a little intimidating. He's a little, his body is close, but they're cantered a little bit. And that's a great position to get people to open up. They can't hide behind anything, and they will often speak more. Introduction. Okay, so a good introduction answers the following questions. Who am I and what do I want? If I walk in and say, my name is Amy, how long have you been abusing women? I'm not going to get much out of anybody, right? But if I walk in and say, hello, my name is Amy, I'm here to better understand your side of the story, I'm going to get a lot more information out of somebody. We used to do this. Like I said, I was a domestic violence detective, and it was a weird concept to me at first, but I quickly understood it. We used to try to sympathize with the abusers all the time to get them to confess. And boy, would they. As soon as they thought that we understood why you would want to hit somebody, they would come out and be like, well, yeah, So got a lot of good information that way. But understanding your side of the story is much friendlier than why are you hitting women? Rapport. To get rapport, we're after the good information, but if we do not have the trust, that's not going to happen. That's the key thing. How do you get rapport? Well, you smile, you make good eye contact, you give a compliment, you find something in common or make it up. Okay? If someone's wearing a Liverpool shirt and you know nothing about soccer, you better start acting like you're interested in soccer, because it's going to open up and they're going to tell you more. Now it's the questions, close-ended versus open-ended. Close-ended are questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. We do not want those. We want questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. Like this: did you work on Saturday? Did you work on Saturday? I could say, yes, I did. That's different than asking me, well, what did you do on Saturday? What I did on Saturday, well, so I woke up, I went for a run, then I did a little bit of work, and then we went to a friend's house for lunch. Okay, you see, I'm getting more information. The other thing is you want to avoid leading questions. If I say, is it true that on July 10th you went to the spa to meet the girl? Well, that's a leading question. I've given them the answer. If they're trying to lie and I've given them July 10th and I've given them the spa, then they're going to use that in their answer and say, yeah, on July 10th I did meet the girl at the spa. But if I ask them, how and where did you meet the girl? They're going to either have to be more creative in their lie or they're going to tell me the truth. Okay, so that's correct. That's what we want to leave these open-ended questions. Memories can be distorted, even created by the tone of voice, phrasing of a question, subtle nonverbal signals, expressions of boredom, impatience, or fascination. Okay, so I can't do what that man did in the video and look at his watch, say, yeah, I can go to that meeting. I'm going to be wrapping this up really quick, right? That girl, the first video we saw, she doesn't feel believed. She doesn't want to tell this man anything anymore. At the same time, I can't listen to someone's horrible story of traumatic violence and think, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to you. I also can't react that way because they're also going to think, boy, that person cannot handle what I'm telling them. All right. So we can distort someone's memories by how we do. All right, here's the second. Yeah, her abductor actually was a serial killer, and they ended up catching him because of her. She's the only person he ever let go. She was an extraordinary witness. I feel for the detectives a little bit because the stuff she's saying, it is unbelievable that someone would notice these things. But she was an unbelievable witness. And actually, she now runs the sex crimes unit. She became a cop later in life because of that. And she works in sexual abuse cases. But it is a fascinating movie. But just to show you how she felt, someone who is, it sounds unbelievable, but they don't need to know that we're doubting them. Okay. All right. Step 5, verification. This is where we review within what we've heard. This is, it's going to look like this. Very good. If I understand you correctly, you told me that you didn't meet her at a Spar, you met her at a Checkers. Is that correct? All right. This is an opportunity to verify what you've heard, opportunity for more detailed notes. This often triggers additional details when you go back into the story and ask them something. This is your chance to ask closed-ended questions. Okay, now you need to verify. You do need to get a definite yes or no. Departures last. You just want to inform them of the next steps in the process. Okay, you don't want them to leave and them have no idea what's happening next. Doing so instills confidence that you're going to deal with the matter, and then you thank and appreciate them. Okay. I'm gonna skip this because I'm just gonna have a couple of slides on indicators and next steps, and then we'll be done. Okay. Again, skipping that video for time. Indicators. When I was looking at GBV versus TIP, there are a lot of similarities, like we talked about. So these indicators are basically indicators that are in both. Okay. Again, you'll get these. You can read over them as I put them up here quickly. But these are all TIP, but these are also, I've seen them in GBV cases, in domestic violence cases. All right. These, however, what I'm about to show you in blue, these are when I think if you see these, that's when you need to start thinking more, okay, this is probably a little bit more trafficking. And GBV also, right? It's intertwined. But this is when you need to start thinking about trafficking. Lives in groups, unstable housing like factory buildings. They live where they work. False travel documents. No protective work equipment, obviously for labor. Discipline through fines. When you start hearing people say that this kind of thing, we might be moving towards debt bondage. Wages are withheld. No days off for long hours. Traveling in a group of people who they just met. Does not know local language. Can only say sex-related words in local language. Okay, sex trafficking. Does not know home or work address. All right, and then these in red I'm going to show you are particularly when it comes to children, people under the age of 18. No access to parents or guardians. Unexplained money or gifts from older people. Okay, it's the grooming process. Unaccompanied by adults while traveling. Okay, next steps. I told you there was this big chart. I know you can't read it, so don't worry about squinting your eyes. But this is an idea to show you there is a flow chart that exists for government, what forms to fill out. I train on it. It's not something you need to know. The only thing you need to know is it starts with identifying and reporting the victim. And that is what we have to do. Okay, even if you suspect it. So you're going to need to report to your police. Well, some of you are thinking, well, Amy, we just talked about this. We talked about corruption, Police are involved in organized crime. So after reporting to police, or if you don't want to at all, okay, South Africa has a human trafficking hotline number. Okay, it is in coordination with the government. It is 0800 222 777. They will report, they will give it to the correct authorities. And what's most important is they will follow up. Okay. The other amazing thing they do at this number is they do job verification. So when you think you see scams coming in, you're not sure if it's a safe job. I've tested this out with a case I was working, and me and the hotline came to the same conclusion. All right. So they do job verification. Lastly, unchain our children. So I'm here today with the NFN, but the NFN is an organization, is kind of like it's a network, right, of organizations. I work for Unchain Our Children. That is an organization within the NFN. This is our crisis line, okay, this number here. We work closely with DSD and SAPS, me being a police officer, former police officer in the States. The guy who founded Unchain Our Children is a former SAPS officer. We will handpick and work with the right police and the right DSD, okay? We're also a designated child protection organization within DSD. So when it comes to trafficking, we can come and remove children, okay? On nights and weekends, holidays, when DSD isn't available, we have an agreement. We will come remove them, and then we will hand the case up. That way, no case has to wait till Monday morning to get started. And lastly, I told you I would put it up here, but our website, unchainourchildren.org.za, if you go to get involved, and you go down to resources, you can find those Let's Talk videos I showed you. You can find some flyers to download, that sort of thing. Please use them as you want. But I will send today's slides and a list of links through to Anissa for today. Okay. It is right almost at 11. Sorry, I've taken you guys right to the tip of time. I know Anissa had to leave for another meeting. But are there any questions about any of this? I can't see. Actually, I'll stop sharing, so hopefully I can see the hands. I'll do that, and I can, yeah. Let me know, or just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak up.
Amy, I've got no questions. I just want to say this was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're so welcome.
Hi, Amy. There's a hand from Linda. Linda Mchale, if you have a question, you may unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. Not a question, but thank you very much. This was a very, very insightful, helpful presentation. Thank you, Amy.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys for all the work you guys do. I just hope something was helpful to clarify with you guys.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much on behalf of the NSM. This was such an informative workshop. Seriously, we're walking away with a lot more information today. We appreciate you taking the time out to join us and do the workshop for us, as well as for all the participants who have joined us. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're so welcome. I see lots of hands and hearts. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah. And then we have one hand raised. That's Minnie.
Yep.
Minnie, you can unmute. Minnie, are you with us? You can unmute. No, not.
Okay.
I think Cindy had a hand up. Cindy, you can unmute.
Thank you, Lungi. I just had one question, Amy. In some of the shelters here in Gersibande, they've had tip clients. So in terms of the forms, I saw you had a flow chart, and we kind of like struggled with the forms. that are to be completed, because I think there are 13 or 14 forms, and some of the forms they like duplicate in terms of we in the shelters, we complete the forms, and then the police also complete the same forms. And mind you, we are basically untrained in terms of Trafficking in Persons Act. So I just wanted to know, how can shelters ensure that all these TIP Act documentation is completed accurately and consistently, especially in our shelters where we are under-resourced and the staff may not be fully trained on such forms?
Sure. So the forms in short are not, most of them are not your jobs. It's the DSD and the SAPs. But I understand that sometimes we like to carry them with us because FCS may show up and be like, well, I don't have the form. So we often print them out on the Unchain Our Children website. Okay, that unchainourchildren.org.za. Under the resources, there is a section, I think it says for government, but obviously anybody can click on it. Okay. I have the whole Trafficking in Persons Act ready to be downloaded. And I have this policy, I think it's called Integrated Victims of Trafficking. And that's got that flow chart and a detailed list of how that flow chart works there. Okay. So if you go just look at that, download those. And you'll give you a better idea. Again, it's a complicated thing to read through. Feel free to, my email is amy@unchainourchildren.org.za, AMY, very easy to remember. Feel free to send me an email with any additional questions you have.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you. This was very
You're welcome.
informative.
Good.
Minnie, I see your hand is up still. If you are able to unmute. No, okay, I see your hand's gone down. Once again, thank you so much, Amy. I'm flabbergasted by the knowledge that I'm walking away with today. So thank you so much. On behalf of everybody, thank you so much. Everybody is basically just saying in the chat that they really enjoyed today's session. So thank you. And we will share the recording as well as the presentation. So please look out for that in your inbox, and wishing everybody a blessed day ahead.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.